All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Tui, and I'm joined with Heather Myers, who is an account executive. Heather, I don't know if you want to quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm an account executive with Ozobot, previously the content and community coordinator, and I will be monitoring the chat and responding. And yeah, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, or I think do we have a Q&A?
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Yeah,
We'll go
so
over
either
that.
the chat or the Q&A, and I will be monitoring and answering questions that you might have during the webinar.
Great. And I'm Melissa Tui. I'm the Ed Tech and Adoption Specialist here at Ozobot. And today we have two very exciting guests. We have Alex Good and Kristen Albright. And we'll tell you more about them in a little bit. But I do want to just go over our agenda very quickly. I'm going to go over some housekeeping items, then we'll introduce Kristen and Alex, who I'm very excited to feature today. They're going to talk about virtual meetings, instruction in digital settings, and just our current situation. They have so much exciting content that I think is going to be so helpful for all educators just to continue engaging student learning in the current context that we're in. So they have so much to share, and I'm really thrilled to be featuring them. And then we'll do Q&A at the end. So just a few housekeeping items. I know everyone likes to ask if they're on mute and their camera is off. Yes, that is the situation. You're automatically muted and your camera is off. If you would like to ask any questions, you can use the Q&A feature or pop a question into the chat and start a dialogue. With the Q&A, you can comment on one another's questions as attendees, and you can upvote. So if you have a question that you would like to have answered, go ahead and upvote that so that we know at the end what the more popular questions might be. Again, Heather and I will be monitoring the chat while Alex and Kristen present today. So if you have any questions or just have comments, that's another great way to connect with other educators. And lastly, we have a link, or actually Alex and Kristen have created this wonderful presentation. Let me go back to it, and we'll type that into the chat. They recommend that you follow along because they have a lot of helpful resources and links that you can actually open up and follow along and look through as they're presenting today. So that link I just popped into the chat. Oh, sorry, that was wrong. It's Ozobot. Oh, and it's automatically changing it for me. So I'll get that in the updated one in the chat once we get started. There we go. Great. So we have Alex Good and Kristen Albright, who are incredible educators. We're so excited to feature them. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and your role?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Alex Good. I am currently a second grade teacher in the State College Area School District. And I'm also pursuing a master's in learning design and technology. So I'm really happy to be with you here today and share a lot of resources that we put together.
Hi, I'm Kristen Albright, and I am an Ozobot certified educator. I've been on several of these opportunities, and Melissa has been wonderful about including me in them. I'm a K-5 STEM teacher currently with the State College Area School District. I've been a librarian, tech coach, gifted support person, and elementary teacher in my unfortunately many years. I'm getting up there in my career, but I'm really excited to share. Alex and I have a different way of looking at this because she's teaching every day and I'm working as a specialist. So we thought we'd be a nice balance of classroom and specialist information for you today. And please follow me on Twitter. It's Albright Teacher, and I can respond to you directly if you have any special questions or some of the things that you'll see that we're doing. I often share out on Twitter.
Yes, and again, I put the link in the chat to this to the slide deck in case you need to access that information, and we'll put that up again at the end so that you can contact Alex and Kristen if any questions come up after the webinar. Great. So with that, I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so that Alex and Kristen can take over, and they can take it away.
Perfect. All
Fantastic.
right. Okay. Can everybody see that okay? All righty,
Yes.
awesome.
Great.
Yeah, so we wanted to start by talking to you about our timeline a little bit. So we actually, the State College Area School District, we went to spring break the week of March 9th. And during that, we found out that we would not be returning to school the following week because of COVID. That quickly turned into a few weeks of not returning back. And now at this point in our district, we will not be returning back into school for the remainder of the school year. So right now we are teaching remotely, and that leads us to resources that Kristen will talk about.
Yeah, our students are one-to-one with Chromebooks. The problem was that the students didn't have their Chromebooks with them because they were on spring break. They don't normally get to take them home. We actually had a deployment where people were giving out lunches and Chromebooks at the same time. Parents would pull up, they would put the Chromebook in the trunk of the parent's car and have them drive off. We're getting to the point where most of our students now are using their own device at home. It was a little tricky as we move into the challenges section with internet access. Penn State, a lot of people think, is a pretty tech savvy area, being so close to Penn State University, but we're finding there's a lot of rural areas around as well. So internet access has been a challenge for some families, especially families with multiple children in the house, how they're able, and I'm sure all of you have seen that in your situations as well. Also, we have a pretty significant language learner population. So having that communication with parents for them to understand what the expectations are has been really difficult, trying to communicate. It seems like at the beginning, it was just a barrage of emails about this is what we're going to do. And as administration and teachers and specialists, we've had to kind of really streamline our communications so that the most important things are coming out rather than something new every day. And as Alex is going to talk to you about structure and routine a little bit further down the slide here, it's really important, as we're going to keep saying, to keep those expectations and the structure and the routine the same every week so parents know what to do, and try to make it as easy as possible for everyone. That's been a big challenge as well. So Alex, do you want to talk about the supports?
Yeah, so when we found out that we weren't returning back to the classroom, our district acted really quickly, and we very quickly put together grade level reps that were to focus on the reading, writing, and math. And with that, we looked at a lot of the standards and talked about which standards does each grade need to focus on in order to prepare students for the following year. So with that, the grade levels put together weekly menus that we push out to our students, as well as the specialists. They created menus as well. And our big focus is making sure that these students are learning asynchronously. So that means that the lessons that we are pushing out, students are not required to be on a computer at a certain period of time. Instead, we push out these lessons and students are doing them at a time that works best for them and their schedule.
And when we're talking about the structure and routine, kiddos right now are really, really struggling and stressed. I've been hearing from teachers, and we know our kids best. That's the part that I think a lot of people don't understand. And being able to have, we use Zoom in our district. Some of you might be using Google Meet or other types of things, but they just want to see our faces. They want to see us and hear us and know that we're okay. And to be able to see their classmates and friends is really important. So Alex and I put together some fun things to make students want to do that, because I don't know if you're all optional, but right now, everything that we're doing is optional. And we want to have students be prepared for the next grade level. But these morning meetings and afternoon meetings are really important to keep that structure and routine. Teachers have actually even pulled things from their classroom and have it as background behind them, especially for the little ones. If they have special puppets or routines that they use in the classroom, they're doing the same things on these Zoom meetings just to make it feel familiar to kids. When you see kids that you know normally are quite talkative, they kind of shut down on Zoom. You can see that they're getting stressed, or kids who are eating their shirts or doing a lot of things that little kids will show you that they're stressed. They're definitely stressed. So being able to keep that structure for parents so they know that specific times are when they're expected to log in for the meetings. Some people are doing some online learning, but we're using these remote learning experiences on Zooms to be something that students can talk and be able to share with each other. And I think that's really important to have that structure and that routine. Any questions as of yet?
We do have one question. Are you using any platforms like Google Classroom, Seesaw, or Schoology?
That's a great question. Yes, we use K-2 is Seesaw, and 3 to 5 in our district is Google Classroom, although some third graders are also using Seesaw as well. Having, again, that structure and routine, we did that pretty much during the school year with those two platforms, so kids were familiar. We didn't want to have to throw out a new platform that kids had never seen before. Alex, do you want to chime in on that as well?
Yeah. So we use Seesaw primarily. So a lot of our activities that we include in our weekly menu are connected to Seesaw. So we're asking them to do activities on the Seesaw platform. But I do believe that a lot of the older grades are using Seesaw as well, because it's just a very easy to use platform.
And as specialists, we're using mostly Google Classroom, just because that's what we used before the break and quarantine. So now we are using them in that same process, keeping it very, very much the same.
And I'm curious to know from both our panelists and our audience, what content area are you being expected to cover with the virtual learning?
Our big focus is reading, writing, and math. So we really looked at those standards, and we talked a lot about what is going to help prepare them for next year. And that was really helpful. We have instructional coaches, and those instructional coaches were there for a lot of our meetings. And that's been great because they kind of have all of the grade levels. So they're really able to tell us what we need to focus on to help prepare them, and what maybe is something that they'll come back to in the following year. And maybe we don't need to focus on that. Just because with only a few weeks left in doing this asynchronous learning, we can't have all of those standards expected to be mastered. So we really have to cut down on that.
And I'm finding as a specialist, we meet often as specialist teams at least once a week, and then we meet as a STEM team many times a week. We have pared it down to what they'll need to know again for the following year. Our curriculum is kind of spirals. So we're trying to hit those key components. We pared ours down as STEM specialists to do send home a coding activity, whether that's Scratch or Scratch Junior or Ozobot, which we sent home. We sent home the, and I have to give a shout out for Ozobot for their shape tracer, which is an awesome activity that went home this week. And then another hands-on where we use the engineering design process, because that's the heart of our whole program is coding and the engineering design process. So everything that we send out is just based on those two things. And we're trying to keep it so that the activities can be done K to 5, because we have a lot of siblings in our district. So we decided not to do K to 2 and 3 to 5. We wanted to make sure that they're all things that all the kids could do together. So if they're doing a science experiment at home, it could be done with all the children in the house who have us as specialists.
Great, thanks. We have one more question. We have Kathy, who is a K-1 teacher librarian, and she's asking how, if there's any advice for managing 350 students and doing 2 lessons a day. Do you have, Kristen, I'm sure you're probably in a similar position because you see so many students. Do you have any insights or suggestions for meeting the needs of that volume of students?
Yes, I absolutely do. We do our menu every week. It started out as a bingo board with 5 different choices for each special, videos that we made and then linked in some sort of activity. And then we had the kids follow up with either an email to us or something in Google Classroom or a Flipgrid. And we found that was kind of unwieldy. So we all pared it down to the 2 most important things for each special. We call it LAMPs, library, art, music, PE, and STEM. so all of our specials get covered. But we're trying something really new this week, and I'm really excited about it for next week. We're going to do what's called a specialist takeover. We're picking a lesson where we each do 5 minutes each of us do 5-minute mini lessons, so we can do them on Zoom. It's going to be instead of the classroom teacher, because again, we want to maintain this excitement. So we're trying to do that. We're kind of a traveling set of specialist takeovers that we're going to take over the Zoom meetings weekly. So we're trying to get through the month of May, trying to hit every class, but it's really impossible to try to get to everybody. As specialists, we're really trying to make sure that our faces are out there, that they can see us. So we make little videos for them, and I pop into all of the Zoom meetings either morning or afternoon. I try to schedule at least 2 or 3 of those a day, but it's tough to be able to get to all the students. Just having videos, just so they know that you care, and giving maybe a read aloud or something that you could email out would be a great way to hit everybody.
Awesome. So we're going to get into kind of establishing the norms and expectations that we've set for when we have these morning meetings with our students. We just have a couple of suggestions. We also want to emphasize that a lot of the documents that we're going to be sharing with you today, they are going to be yours to copy and use in your own classroom. So we hope that you like these ideas and use them in the future. So one of the things that we started with is using the numbered students and using Google Slides as a way to begin greeting your students. So we have an example of that I'll show you in just a moment, but a really important tool to use when you're meeting with students on Zoom is the selective use of mute. So teaching kids when to mute themselves, how to unmute themselves, that's kind of like a mini lesson in itself. Also letting students know when you plan to mute them all so that they don't unmute themselves, and also setting the norms ahead of time. So what I'm about to show you here, if you can still see my screen here, these are just some meeting reminders that you will have access to. And this is actually a slide that I include in my morning meeting that I review with my students every single morning. So just setting some of those expectations that you want to pretend like you're sitting at the carpet at school. So making sure that you're sitting up. A really important one is making sure to limit the distractions around you and choosing a quiet place to tune in. So just kind of establishing a lot of these expectations at the start is a really important part of the process. This is an example here, this slide here, of how I greet. So I actually have pictures of my students. I just use smiley faces for this example here, but we'll use their pictures to greet in a circle. And so if we're doing a virtual fist bump, we'll choose a student to start with, and that way they don't have to pay attention to the videos, but instead they're looking at your Google slide in order to greet one another around the circle there. So again, this example is going to be shared with you, but Kristen's going to talk a little bit about the chat feature as well.
Yeah, chat can be somewhat helpful, but it can also be really distracting. So a lot of the teachers that I've worked with, they allow the chat at the beginning and then close it down. We talk about how emojis are not words, and so you need to actually use words, which is practicing the reading and writing part of it. And you can disable it and have the students only be able to respond to you instead of having them be able to respond to each other, because otherwise it becomes "what's up?" and smiley face, snake, heart, paw print, which really isn't anything. So we see that chat feature is really helpful in some situations, but it's really distracting in other situations. So that's certainly up to the teacher, but please know that you can adjust that chat on the fly and change who the students are able to communicate with. And then also the breakout rooms. We talked about breakout rooms because sometimes they are in very large groups. It really helps to have them be able to use those breakout rooms, especially for children who are a little more shy or not as willing to speak in front of the whole group. And we have some activities down the road here in this presentation that involve using the breakout room. This is where parent volunteers who have clearances, or your paraprofessionals or other people that you can bring in for younger students would be really helpful to manage the breakout rooms. If you don't use those and you have older students, putting a student in charge really allows them to feel that responsibility. So I would definitely have somebody there. And notice when you're doing your breakout room, you can message them at any time. So you can manage time that way and have them do a task when they're off in their small groups, but then you can bring them back together. I've seen people with younger students use them almost like centers that they rotate through. And I think that's really a nice way to be able to touch base with only 4 or 5 students at a time rather than the entire class. And they actually have your full attention for that 10 minutes or 5 minutes that you have them rather than the entire time. And you can give them separate tasks, which keeps it interesting and allows students to feel confident in their abilities to do their small groups because you have an adult there to help them. And we also just included a link to Zoom's best practices. We're not going to go over that today, but I thought it was really helpful, especially if you're new to Zoom. These also apply to Google Meet or whatever other platforms that you're using, just how to use them the best way. And it gives you some really practical suggestions beyond what we've shared here with you today.
Awesome. So when we think about breaking down our morning meetings, I also just want to clarify, for me as a second grade teacher, I have a morning meeting every morning for about 30 minutes. It is optional. So my students, if they're able, can choose to come in. And each morning meeting for me focuses on 3 different things. The first is a greeting and check-in. The second is the sharing. And the third is the activity, which is the really fun piece. And that's the piece we're going to be focusing on a lot throughout this meeting here. But to start, we always start with a greeting and a check-in. That's really important, especially because this is a time where all the students can see each other. It's meant to be really quick. So mine typically takes around 2 minutes because as you get younger, with the younger years, you just want to make sure that they don't lose their stamina. So this can also be related to content, and it's also a great time to introduce the guests that are coming in. So Kristen actually came to one of my Zoom meetings. We got to talk to Kristen a little bit and introduce anyone that's joining you.
And then it's also a great way to students to practice those tech skills of muting and unmuting. And then some of the other teachers, I thought this was really handy. And I'm noticing that in the chat, a lot of people are saying that they don't use Zoom for different privacy reasons. Our district has really locked ours down with passwords and waiting rooms and some other things. Google Meet is the same kind of idea. So a lot of these would be applicable, especially when you add some of the add-ons with Google Meet. But allowing the kids to come in 10 to 15 minutes prior to the actual lesson allows them to have some of that silly social time. What I notice is a lot of kids hold their cat up by the face, like really close to the camera. We're getting a lot of really close pets or stuffed animals or puppets or whatever they want to do. And it allows them to get some of that time with their peers that they haven't had. Some people actually allow this in the middle of their Zoom session, and they call it recess for 5 minutes, where they stop doing the lesson and they allow them just to be social for a little bit for recess, and then they come back together. So having them having that social time is really kind of fun.
Can you talk a little bit more about virtual recess? Because I'm picturing a bunch of different things in my mind. Is it kind of like a structured like dance group activity, or just social time for them to check in?
Sometimes they just are, when you notice that they're getting kind of squirrely, and as we notice, you know, and that's not really even a disrespectful term if you've ever worked with small kids, you know, they're getting antsy and wiggly, just letting them have some time to just all talk. I noticed with the kindergarten ones, especially with the selective mute, some of them don't even realize that they're being muted and they just want to talk. So you see their mouth moving the entire time. And that would be a time where they would want to be able to shout out. So having that break time, if you're doing a writing lesson or something, let them just talk for a couple minutes to people that they see, or open that chat back up for some of the older students. But then closing it back down and being able to get back to work can save you a lot of time in the long run by letting them get that out. That's why we like to do it beforehand, but sometimes that I've had teachers just call it virtual recess or virtual social time. Either before or after the lesson, and sometimes even during, if you're noticing your audience, you're losing your audience. It's really valuable because they want to see each other. Kids are bored. They want to see their friends. They want to hear about the video game that they're playing, or see their cat, or have their little brother or sister pop in. And that's been the most exciting part for me. And I know I've seen a lot of different things. I never thought we'd have to go over the rule of you must have clothes on for a Zoom meeting. True story. A boy was showing up at meetings without a shirt on. So we had to email that parent and let them know that that's not appropriate. So yeah, I mean, it's a little kid, but still trying to make it as school-like as possible really allows them to focus a little better, I think is the best way to put it. And these activities that we're going to be sharing next, I think are really exciting and will allow you to do a lot of things with your kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm really excited to share these activities with you because I think a lot of them are activities that I do for like my virtual recess. And so next we're going to get into sharing. So we start off with our greeting, then we head into sharing here. So we've put together some sharing questions that you can use. This is just a great opportunity for kids to talk a little bit. So we have on this screen here,
and I did not make these. Alex did all of it. So if you're asking for help on these, ask her, not me. She is the queen of organizational slides and making of wonderful looking things. Mine are always just blank. They look like generic slides. So.
Well, so one of the sharing ideas that we have is starting off with would you rather questions. So we put together a lot of would you rather questions that you can ask your students. Some of them are a little bit more serious, some of them are really silly. Yesterday I did would you rather have one eye in the middle of your head or two noses. So the kids have a lot of fun answering and responding to those questions. It's also a great time to bring up just other random questions. These can be a little bit more restorative. So thinking about how are you feeling today? What are you going to, some of these ones down here, how are you going to move your body today? Who are you connecting with? I think these ones are really important when we think about what these children are going through. They can also bring in sharing items. So like Kristen was saying, when the kids are first getting onto Zoom, for the first couple sessions, all they want to do is share their stuffed animal or share their pet or share their sibling. So just allowing them to have that sharing time is crucial as well. And so when we go back, there we go. And headline news, that's just an opportunity for the students to talk about what they did over the weekend.
As Alex had mentioned too, discussing the feelings and concerns, these kids have a lot of anxiety. And I know their anxiety is different than grown-up anxiety. I mean, we're worrying about paying bills and other things, but they don't understand why, especially the very young students, why they're stuck at home. They may be hearing a lot of things from mom and dad or on the news. And so this would be a great time to invite a guidance counselor in too. We know our students best. So being able to pick up on some of those little things that you see them doing. As I said, the one boy who has been now not speaking in Google meetings, but chewing on a shirt instead. You can definitely tell that that is a sign of anxiety, and being able to check in with students. Having some of those uncomfortable conversations about what they're worried about is really tough. But we're their safe space. We don't know what's going on at home, and this would be a time for them to share their concerns. They're worried about the virus and how it's going to affect their families. So having some of those deeper questions, especially with older students. And if you don't feel like having a discussion that way, having a writing assignment could also be a way to connect with them and touch base. Having them just send a couple sentences to you in either an email or a Google Classroom assignment. Letting them know their feelings and that their concerns are valid is really important for the mental health of our kids, which is really a big reason why we're doing a lot of these things. A lot of our activities are optional and a lot of things are ungraded, but we want them to know that we're here for them during this difficult time. So these sharing moments, although they seem kind of silly at the beginning, some of them are silly, but you can actually get into throw in some questions that really are taking the temperature of the students' feelings and concerns at the time, which would be helpful for them, not only this year, but moving into next school year as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm seeing a question here that I can answer live, and it's asking about the waiting room in the district. So we actually do have waiting rooms as well. That was something that our school district implemented to make sure that we are making these as safe as possible. And so for me, what I actually do is when I let kids enter into the waiting room, I take the first 5 minutes as kind of their social time. That actually makes sure that kids, if they're running like a few minutes late, that they can get logged in. They can use the chat. So we talk about how to use the chat like appropriately, because for me, it started with all of the kids just tapping the keyboard and it was just nonsense. So we talked a little bit about questions you could ask. And so that is how I implement the social time at the beginning before we get our routine started. All right, and so next we're heading into my personal favorite piece and why a lot of you guys are here, and that is the activities. So after we finish up our sharing, we head into our activities. This is really just a time to create a lot of excitement for these kids, get them motivated to come to these meetings that you're having. And a lot of times you can put a lot of instruction into this. So you can practice those reading, writing, and speaking skills. We also included down here allowing the students, once you have done a bunch of these activities, as like a motivation. So allowing the students to choose some of your activities. So we have in my school pride slips, and we're doing virtual pride slips where my students can earn those virtually for demonstrating good behaviors. And then we put them into a little raffle, and then we'll pull out students, and that student can choose one of the activities for the day. So this link right here.
This is worth, again, I did not make this.
This is, I really hope that everyone enjoys this link here. So this is the remote learning activities that we put together. So this is ready to go, ready to use with a lot of different activities that you can immediately implement into your classroom. Just a quick little navigation. Kristen and I have chosen 2 that we're going to talk to you about, like 2 of our top 2 favorites. But these are all the activities here. If you click on an activity, and we'll show you what that looks like in a second, it's going to take you to the directions. And then to navigate back home, every slide should have a heart on it. And that's going to take you back to the activities screen here. So Kristen, do you want to talk about your top 2 favorite activities?
Absolutely. I tend with older students. So my first one is and I'm hearing I'm unstable. I've heard that before, but if you want to click on Desert Island for me, it's on the first slide.
Yes. There it is. There we go.
You divide the class into equal-sized groups and put them into breakout rooms, and you give them a list of items that they may choose from, and they have to come up with a consensus about which 5 items are the most important. It gets them debating and discussing, and then they come together as a whole group to discuss why they picked the items that they did and why. I think it's a fun idea to get them talking and being respectfully disagreeing. They have in our classroom, when we do our morning meetings, they know that they're allowed to disagree, but they have to do it in a respectful way, and that kind of keeps that going. So that's one of my favorites. If you want to go back to my other one, this is one that I thought of for older students, especially if you're doing things like biology or math. If you click down on, I'm pointing like you can see what I'm doing. Yikes. The picture memory in the bottom corner.
Got it.
If you display a picture on your screen and share it for a minute, it could be something that's fun. It could even be a picture of your classroom that you took before you left. And you close the picture and have the students write as many things as they can remember, and then they send that list in a private message to the teacher. So they think about what they, so it could be something thematic or it could be something silly, but it's very much like a game that's really quick and easy, and it can very much tie into what you're doing in your to help drive instruction as well. So those are my 2 favorites.
Awesome. All right, so again, this whole slideshow is going to be shared with you. I'm noticing someone says the link has been disabled, so we will absolutely check on that.
That was me. I accidentally typed in the wrong link, but I fixed it.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, so my 2 activities that I'm going to share with you today, the first is fact and fiction. So this is like 2 truths and a lie. where you will choose a student or yourself to come up with 3 different statements, and 2 will be true and 1 has to be a lie. And the students have to guess which one is the lie. So just kind of a little teacher advice here. I did this with my 2nd graders, and the first time that I did it, I just gave them a little bit of think time and then started calling on students. And in 2nd grade, when kids are thinking on the spot, it sounds a lot like, I have one brother, my favorite color is purple, and I am not nice. So we went on for like 3 different kids, and all 3 was always like that 3rd one. So my recommendation is I provided this. This I actually uploaded, I screenshotted it, uploaded it into Seesaw, and created an activity where my students put this in so that they could think about it a little bit. And then I came back to this activity the following day, and we did 2 truths and a lie, and it worked a lot better. And they came up with really good ones because they had a lot more time to think about it. So that's the first one. That's a really fun one there. The second one I want to share with you is called The Missing Link. And so for this one is actually pre-made. So if you were to just go right to this PowerPoint, you'd be able to play this. So for this activity, students have to guess the missing link word that links 2 different words together. So the first example that I have here is Peter. And so we're looking for a word that's going to come after Peter. And then we're looking for a word that's going to come before cake. So it's going to be the same word, and it is not Peter ate cake. It's the same word that's going to connect to the end of Peter, and it's going to start off the beginning of cake. Anyone in the chat know it? This
should have thought ahead of time.
Yeah, someone got it. Peter Pan. Yes. So Peter Pan, and then pancake. So then there's another one. We'll just do like one more. So news.
Oh, I know that one.
Yes, there we go. Paper. Yeah. So my kids really enjoyed this one. It was actually really hard. It was a really good brain challenge for them. So that was a really fun one for them to do. So again, all of these here, they all have directions, and a lot of them we've tried to give you examples as well that you can simply use this and screen share it with your students so that you can begin to implement it right away.
The scavenger hunt one, you don't necessarily have to click on, but it was kind of funny right before we met at 11:30 prior to this, or whatever time it is, 8:30, is that your time? 8:30 on the West Coast. But we planned what we were going to do and wrap up with this, but then we thought about what I could do with her class next week as a specialist. And so we thought we would do a scavenger hunt where they get 4 or 5 different items. She's going to tell them ahead of time to have a roll of tape handy. And I'm going to say, get something that bends, get something that holds weight, get something that's waterproof. And then I'm going to give them about 5 minutes to build something using those particular things, which is really fun. And it's a way for me to do, I would do something very similar in my STEM class, but a short little thing that ties in what Alex has been using in her classroom and letting me have an opportunity. I saw there were a lot of STEM teachers out there, so that could be a fun way to jump in or offer that activity to your homeroom teachers. Is a fun way to get them used to playing games, have them find some things. So it's a way that specialists can help too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I'm so excited for that next week. I'm also seeing here a question that I can answer live that's asking how we created this Google slide here. So you can absolutely make a copy of this. I actually found this format that I fell in love with. It's going to be at the last slide here to credit them. And it is on Slides Go. So Slides Go had a lot of different formats that I simply uploaded. And then in order to connect all of the activities, I type them in here, and then you can link them to different slides so that it can bounce you back and forth. So you can feel free to make a copy of that and add on. And I hope to also keep this so you can refer back to it, more activities that I'm finding as amazing teachers all across are sharing so many activities each day. I hope to add those in here so that if you kind of get bored of them, you can come back and there will be some new ones. Another thing that Kristen and I talked about with these activities is that really so many of them can go from K to 12. So these activities, while some of them might be a little bit more on the younger side, Kristen has talked about so many ways that you could tweak it to just make it for the older kids as well.
And don't forget that you can play games, and we put things at the end like Kahoot. You can do Kahoots live. I have my students either use a separate screen as well as their laptop screen. I always have 4 or 5 screens going. Anyone who knows me, I always have lots of devices. Or they can actually split their screen and be able to play Kahoot. They love Kahoot so much. It's a really fun way to get them engaged. And if you tell them a Kahoot is coming, our whole reason for doing this, and the whole reason I brought this up to Ozobot to have as a topic, is a lot of us are doing optional things. So how are you getting your kids to come to these meetings? If you make them fun and you use these same ideas, and a lot of them, as we've said, have writing components or reading components with them. It's a way to get them involved. If you're optional, how are you going to get them to opt to come? And especially the high school. I don't know how high school and middle school, without having some really exciting things, if it's not just a guest speaker, to really get them to want to be there. I think by putting these in here, you're covering a lot of ground. And even though it seems fun and silly, you're able to make them excited. It could be an exciting part of their day. I know that Mrs. Good's kids just absolutely love her, and who wouldn't, but when they get so excited to know what it's going to be. And sometimes you tell them ahead of time, right? And other times it's a surprise.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I like to do to kind of build the excitement is in some of those morning meeting slides that I shared, when I introduce or just start with like my message, I'll kind of let them know so that at the end they know kind of what activity is coming and kind of build a little bit of excitement. Or I'll tell them, oh, we're going to play this tomorrow. So that way kind of gets them up, wakes them up, gets them excited in the morning. Awesome. All right, so that was kind of the big thing that we were excited about. That's a big reason why a lot of you guys were here. So we're really excited to share that with you. And we also wanted to talk about another suggestion that we have, and that is talking about daily themes. And Kristen's going to talk a lot about that.
Absolutely. Daily themes are when you have them for leading up to homecoming or leading up to an event that you have, or a fundraiser at school. It gives them something to look forward to, and it also builds that sense of community, even though you're not in the same building. It allows them to have something to look forward to. I'm attending one at 1:00 where it's sunglasses day. So I have my sunglasses ready to go. And so this link to theme day suggestions, we kind of just spewed out as many ideas as we could possibly think of for different themes. And again, made this, I always just make a big list, but she has it go day by day with the links here. So if you want to go down through, say, Monday, Friday is my favorite one because it's all the virtual field trips that are possible. And it could be a fun way to do that. Having field trips from your classroom. And Fun Fridays, changing your background for the day and have people guess where you are. I mean, it's such a simple thing, but they can be excited and be ready. And sometimes when you see them right before share time, or they get so excited, just like they do in the classroom. So having those theme days, if you want to go back to the other ones, like Monday is a really good one too, where, and as I said, I just spewed these out, but she put them in a nice format for you. Go Noodle, how many, I'm sure I'm asking a question like you can answer it, but doing a Go Noodle, our kids love that for in the classroom. And I think it's a really fun way to connect. And so doing all those different activities to get them up and moving, being mindful or motivational too. So these are just some ideas that we brainstormed about what you can do with the different days of the week. And again, these are shareable for you with all the links embedded.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just want to, something that I've been doing with my students that they've really been enjoying has been for Field Trip Friday. We will actually go to a field trip, which initially I was like a little nervous to take my kids on a virtual field trip. I was like, oh, I don't really know how exciting this can really be. And I clicked on it and we navigated through I think we went to the Smithsonian, and they were so into it. Like the engagement was so high. They were like, go to the right, let's see what's over there. So then I connected that, what we were seeing in the Smithsonian right after we learned about some insects, we did a directed drawing. So for over here, We Create Wednesday, we have a link here to a couple directed drawing places. Art for Kids Hub is one that I highly recommend. This is a great website with incredible directed drawings. So we learned a little bit about insects, and then we actually drew Fly Guy. So the kids just love, and that's just one way to kind of connect a couple pieces together, 2 activities in one almost. Awesome.
It looks like we are about 15 minutes left. So do we want to take the rest of the time for Q&A? We also included some additional resources here that we did not have time. Believe me, we could divide this into about 8 different sessions and still have more to talk about. But the resources page has an actual wheel spinner. I've seen that being used a lot for picking different people to talk. Dice and spinners, the customizable Jeopardy game, Kahoot. Nearpod also has a lot of games, and those can be also asynchronous, which is really fun if you're only in an asynchronous environment. And then Wakelet at the bottom, which is a really handy tool for putting resources together. So these are different ones that Alex has used or I have used to enhance our online lessons.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing all of that. This has been so wonderful. I know the Ozobot team has been in the background just singing your praises throughout your presentation, and I can only imagine what the educators in the audience are feeling. We're just so thrilled for you to share all these amazing, fun ideas. So one question that I wanted to quickly ask was, it seems that some of the educators in the audience don't have access to video instruction, and due to privacy concerns, their districts are not allowing students to be on camera. So do either of you have any suggestions for educators that can't interact with their students through video?
That's a tough one because a lot of the things that we do are with video, but I definitely think you can do questions and some of these same activities in a Google Classroom or a Seesaw setting. Seesaw has tons and tons and tons of activities that you can do with your kiddos that are already made. Nearpod, as I had mentioned, has some games that they can play asynchronously. They can do some of the other quiz games and things asynchronously, so you can have them competing at a distance. They are not in the same room or not being videotaped. Scavenger hunts, for example. You could have them, another one that I hadn't even mentioned on here is Goose Chase. Goose Chase is doing a lot of their stuff for free. If you've ever done a Goose Chase, it's like an online scavenger hunt that's asynchronous, so they could do their work that way. So there's lots of different ways. Oh yeah, someone's shouting out Goose Chase. And that could be a way that you're doing it, so it's not a live video. But I would suggest just using the tools that you have, whatever platform, whether it's Google Classroom or Seesaw. And Flipgrid, I know that they have a video capability, but you could also have them, when I do it with students who are not allowed to be filmed, they either block their video or they hold something up in front, or they use an emoji instead of their own video for privacy concerns. So there's a lot of different ways that you can work around it with the same types of activities. Oh, and Breakout EDU, that's a suggestion as well. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely add those in too.
Yeah, great. I know it's coming up in the chat, so I just want to address it. I think what people have been saying that the one of the links requires access, so we'll just get that updated so that it's viewable by all, and that'll be updated after we finish the webinar here today. So
yes, I just did it. I apologize about that. You should be able to access it now. I'm sorry. I thought I triple checked before this.
It happens. It happens. No problem. Thank you. Let's see. My Q&A went away. Let's see if any other questions came up. Let's see. Are you familiar with Edpuzzle? That's not a platform I'm familiar with, but are either of you?
Yes, I like Edpuzzle, especially for older students where you can have a video and you embed questions throughout. I think that's a really great tool. We didn't mention it here, but that would be another way to teach asynchronously and let them be able to either you create or you find on YouTube, and you can put the, I haven't used it recently because I wasn't sure about the, okay, there you go, that end question. It's free right now for all teachers. So that would be something to look into. But Edpuzzle is really, really nice. And as they said, Breakout EU, and lots of really, really great ideas in the chat.
Great.
Padlet's another good one. Having them be able to respond asynchronously something. I love suggestions. We're gonna have a lot to add.
I know, that's good.
To our research.
I think someone's also wondering if you've used Edpuzzle for virtual field trips. Have you used that function?
No, but that's a good idea. I love that idea. Yeah. Using Edpuzzle for a virtual field trip, embedding questions throughout. That would be really cool. Another one I was thinking about is ClassKick, that they could log in with a code and be able to do an activity that way. That's asynchronous as well.
Have either of you considered setting up a STEAM night or a community-based event virtually? Brooke is wondering, that's something that she's interested in doing, but she doesn't know where to start.
Yes, I'm so glad to ask because I'm right in the middle of doing that right now. We had an expo for our school that was called a STEAM expo, obviously the science and the technology, and then the arts part and the reading. So we had planned to do that, and we were trying to put it off as long as possible, but our governor calls for the end of the year. Have already planned a lot of things, and so fair that they didn't get to present. So actually we made a third channel that they upload all of this to that. We're also using Flipgrid for poetry, and we're using a Flipgrid, a separate one, our one principal leaving, so every student is posted by message to the principal using Flipgrid. If you're not Flipgrid, it's a great free tool for having students be able to click on and make a video recording, and then other people can comment. So what our plan is for our virtual night is that students are going to be able to post their videos and then have people respond, and then that's asynchronous. One of my other schools also just did March Madness for books, March Madness books, reading where they're voting, and they did a very similar to this where only the presenters were listed over here on the side, and everybody else did Q&A, but it was a thing where everybody could tune in to Zoom at home at night and hear about the different books that were being presented, and they had live polls and voting, and then they actually, even for people who stayed the whole time, had some prize drawings for books that they were able to ship to the kids' homes. So these are three examples of things that we've been doing using either Flipgrid or Zoom to build community throughout. You have to just kind of watch your time to decide whether you want to do it evening or during the day, unless you're doing it asynchronously like we would Flipgrid. But I would suggest Flipgrid for any type of expo, because they get their 3 minutes to talk and everybody gets to show it. And then they have a thing called Flipgrid mixtape, where you can put them all together and then it just shows each video one by one in kind of in a sequence. And so you don't actually even have to download the videos to do anything with them. I hope that answered your question.
Great. If we have any final questions, I would encourage you to post them in Q&A or the chat. But for while we're waiting for those questions to come through, I just want to go over a few announcements. If you do want to request PD credit certificate for this webinar, You can email support@ozobot.com. If you'd like a recording of this webinar, there was so much great information and the links. Be sure to opt in for our email updates on the Ozobot website. You can also view this webinar once we post it to our YouTube channel. If you have questions for Alex, her email is posted there, and questions for Kristen, you can tweet at her Twitter handle. If you want to connect with other educators in general, we also have our Ozobot Academy Facebook group where you can discuss and share ideas there as well if you're looking to connect with other educators. And if you're new to Ozobot and you're not super familiar, but you're interested in knowing more about coding and computer science, you can request a demo with one of our STEAM specialists at ozobot.bot/request demo. And our team will take care of you. So let's see if any other questions came through. Cass or Heather, did you see any other questions come through while?
I think someone was wondering about the weekly menu, wondering if you find that helpful. They have ELA twice a week, math twice a week, and social studies and science on Thursday, Friday. Do you have any advice on STEAM menu or menus?
Yeah, I can speak to that. We have been really loving our weekly menus. We encourage students to do 1 to 2 of the menu options per week. So we often give them 6 different menu items. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently as we move into next week, where we'll be doing some video recordings and then asking students to complete an activity after we video recorded them, or video record after they watched our video. But I love the options that we've been able to give the students with the menu so that they can kind of pick and choose what interests them or what kind of mood they're in that day. So that's been working out really well for us.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you both to Alex and Kristen. Again, behind the scenes, our team has just been so thrilled with all of the content that you've created and shared, and we're just so thankful that you're willing to share and help support other teachers. I know this is a really, really tough and challenging time for students and educators and families, and hopefully this webinar and your resources alleviate a little bit of that pressure and is helpful, and I know it's going to be. So we very much value your expertise and all the resources that you shared. Again, let me go back to that slide in case anybody wants to reach out to either Kristen or Alex. Their information is there. But thank you both again. We very much appreciate you taking the time. It's been a wonderful webinar.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been great. I like putting everything together. Now I can use it for all my activities. I was like, this is very handy. Thank you.
All right, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Melissa.